Hey guys, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I'm going to go over with you guys the questions that I would like to see answered the most at the North American Fan Festival in Las Vegas, where the next live letter is going to be taking place. Now, we already know that the topics are going to be patch 2.4 and Final Fantasy XIV in general, confirming that patch 2.4 won't be till at least after the North American Fan Festival, probably not until after the European Fan Festival either. Now, I actually went to the forums, and the topics that we were allowed to ask about were Final Coil, Hildibrand, item level and Tomestones, those were lumped together, and general questions. And actually, for the first time I kind of read through all the questions because these are kind of topics that to me are predictable in their nature. Now, I say that only because of our past experiences, not that the development team couldn't come up with new things that we may not know about that we could ask questions about if we knew about. You know, that was not a very good sentence, so I'm just going to go ahead and say that I didn't have a lot of questions for this live letter. I'm more interested in the expansion because we're used to the way the patches work. You know, we get a few new dungeons, we get a new raid, we get a new primal, we know basically everything about the patch already. We just really kind of want to find out about those littler details. We still want to know things about like marriage and the gold saucer, and you know, those are questions that are all in the general section. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go through each topic, and if I don't have a question, which I don't actually have for most of the topics outside of general and item level, I'm going to be highlighting the questions I would like to see answered most and my thoughts on why I want to see those questions answered the most. So let's go through the different topics, shall we? So the first topic I want to touch on is the final coil of Bahamut. Now, of course, there's all the standard questions that people are going to want to know. How many bosses will there be? What's the new item level going to be? Things like that, and they're there, they're present, they're upvoted. I don't need to ask those questions again. Lore-wise, I didn't want to ask a question that would spoil something for you guys in the video, and I kind of didn't even want to ask it on the forums to spoil things, because there are people who haven't beat Coil who look through that, and they don't want to see spoilers if they haven't beaten it yet. And yes, they are still spoilers for some people, even though it's been like 6 months since they came out. You know, people still claim spoilers for like games that are 10 years old. So as far as I'm concerned, I wanted to avoid that. But there are two questions that I really, really want to see answered. And they are actually, one's very basic question, one's not so basic. The basic question that I want to see answered is how many turns are there going to be? Now, a lot of people seem convinced that we'll end on turn 13. I'm not so convinced. I think we're going to get 5 bosses and 5 turns. First of all, with the new job coming out, having an extra boss makes spreading out the loot a lot more, I guess I could have said a lot more easier, because that's not right English, and I don't know. It makes things easier, just having the loot spread out a little bit more with the extra job coming in. But more importantly, Final Fantasy XIV, first, you know, A Realm Reborn, ending on turn 14, just, you know how they are with the symbolism of the number of the game, 14, turn 14 being the last one. That's just how I see it playing out. But I would like to get some sort of confirmation. Maybe it could be turn 15. Maybe it will be turn 13. Who the heck knows? We've gotten 4 bosses in every coil prior. Just curious what it is. And the other question is, have you considered a token system for loot? For those of you who don't know, I want to try and explain a token system to the best of my ability. A token system is basically an item will drop. It's not an equipable item. It's a form of currency. Think of it like the UAT, the Sand of Time, and the Oil of Time. You take that item, and whatever job or class it says can use it, can roll on it. They can roll need on it. In this game, I would imagine that the tokens would actually be for every job, because I don't know. It's so many spread out, and there's not so many bosses. So restricting it between jobs, I don't know if it's a good idea. And what it means is that it's basically a freebie. Like, if every week your Bard Legs won't drop, but the Bard Leg token is dropping, you can get that token and get yourself an upgrade. Of course, the thing is, and a lot of people have pointed this out, the token system is it's not so well designed. This game's not so well designed for it. There aren't a lot of stat choices, so having more gear choices doesn't really alleviate much of anything. So if they are going to do a token system, which kind of Sands and Oils of Time are sort of a quasi-token system, I'm just curious if they're considering it, if they're just going to do the same thing they did with Soldiery with the weathered and unweathered and sort of introduce a new form of Sands and Oils, but we're really just going to have to see. I'm just more interested in how many turns there will be and how the loot system is going to work, if it's going to replicate the first coil or if it's going to replicate the second coil. Those are the only 2 questions that I would like to highlight. Now, Hildibrand, again, another topic. I can't really ask any questions without spoiling things. There's spoilers all over the Hildibrand section of the forums right there. But I mean, really, most people asking about Hildibrand are the people interested in Hildibrand. So again, it's kind of hard to call them spoilers, but I don't want to ask anything here in case anyone watching this video hasn't done the quest. They are phenomenal quests in my opinion. They are just such a lighthearted take on the otherwise very dark game. Sure, there's a lot of humor in the game, but it's very lighthearted, and it's a little bit of a change of pace that I like. So I hate to be that guy who asks a useless question, but I was just looking at the forum like, I really should ask something. Like, yeah, I could ask about Gilgamesh Extreme. I could ask about the next fight that is most likely coming in 2.4, which I'll make another video about separately. But the question I asked was, will Hildibrand ever find true love? And I'm sorry, I'm that guy who asked the question nobody cares about. And I know every time I'm in the chat when a live letter is going on and somebody asks a question like that, everyone's like, what a waste of a question. You know what? That's the kind of question that hopefully only will take 5 seconds out of their time, and they won't go into like a giant explanation on it and say that they have something. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they'll say they have something planned for the future. But whatever. I'm sorry to be that guy. The one thing I do want to highlight, though, is this question was asked really early on. I think it was like the first question somebody asked on the Hildibrand section. And that was, since 3.0 is around the corner, will you guys be planning a grand Hildibrand quote-unquote send-off quest to end the series? Or will we be possibly seeing him again in 3.0? I don't know if they're ending his questline in 2. Whatever ends before the expansion. I don't know if he's going to be following us to whichever areas we're going to next. But it's a question, and I hope they answer it. So, with that out of the way, let's move on to the last topic. Now, I probably shouldn't have said last topic. It's the last specified topic, and it's item level and tomestones. I kind of lugged them together, which, if they're adding a Q&A about it, I mean, for the most part, it's been predictable. Like, that's the thing. All these things we're giving the chance to ask questions about are more of the predictable things. I kind of wanted to see not more original things we could ask questions about, because I know there's going to be a heavy emphasis on the expansion at the Fan Festival. 2.4 is more or less just making an appearance. So I actually did have 2 questions, but one of them is not so much about item levels concerning 2.4, but more about item levels as a whole. So the first question that I asked is, and this is just a pet peeve of mine with the user interface for the character screen, will tomestones no longer in use be removed from the currency menu and automatically converted into the next applicable tomestone for clarity? Many new players find it confusing to see philosophy tomestones when they are no longer available. I've gotten that question pretty often, like, how do I get philosophy tomestones? Like, you don't. They don't exist anymore. They're like, well, why is it in the menu then? And I don't have a good answer for that, because honestly, I don't think they need to keep creating a new tomestone. And a lot of people have said this, they could have just stuck with philosophy and mythology the whole time, and then you do a conversion every time you want to push a new set of gear out for, you know, mythology in this case, since I used philosophy and mythology as my example for the 2 currencies they could use. You could just push everyone's mythology into their philosophy and then just reset their mythology, and then they have to gather that from scratch all over again for the newest patch. You know, that's a problem that they that just constantly creating a new tomestone isn't necessary. It seems like an unnecessary use of thinking when it could be so much simpler. Also, the fact that they leave the conversion in the hands of the player, they can very easily implement a system that takes care of all that for us. They don't need more menus for currency exchanges or things like that. It is something that can be automated, and I hope by the expansion, since we already know we're getting a new tomestone, that they have that kind of system in place for whatever currency we're going to be getting when we go into 3.0. Now, the other question I have is actually something I should probably make a video about all on its own. And it's not a question so much about item level for 2.4. It's more of a question about item level in general. And it's a look into the developmental minds of, you know, the developers. And it's, have you guys calculated an acceptable power creep for players as we increase an item level to prevent numbers from getting out of hand? Now, that is, a lot of people, when they look at games that, you know, have the item level system, most people will look at World of Warcraft. Item level isn't something that's been around in World of Warcraft forever. I would like to remind you of that. But they eventually added it and it became a measuring point for how strong the gear was and how effectively skilled the player was, even though it had no correlation between the two. And what ultimately ends up happening is, because you're on this treadmill of raising the item level, what ultimately ends up happening is you reach a point where the character strength is just ridiculous compared to where it started. Sure, I understand the gear is getting stronger, you're getting stronger. It makes sense in a way, right? You're constantly leveling up your character in a way. But there is a point where the numbers just get so ridiculous, and World of Warcraft has already gone out of their way to fix their power creep. They've substantially reduced the degree to which it's creeped by doing what I think it was called a level of a power crunch or something like that. I don't know. I'm just curious if they have any design ideas of where they're going to sort of draw the line and do their own version of a power crunch to prevent power creep from making us feel like one shot, like going in and just killing Ultimate Weapon in 10 seconds because we can do so much damage. Just things like that. I want to know if they have any sort of plans for power creep. I would also like to highlight this one question for item levels and tomestones, and it's something they've expressed interest in the past. And somebody asked, will item level syncs be applied to older dungeons to prevent them from getting even easier? Now, I'm kind of the person who loves the idea of, hey, I'm this strong, I'll go back into the old dungeons that have mounts or minions and things like that, solo up to the point where I can try and get it, leave and come back. It's actually a feature that I think World of Warcraft has over every other game because they have so much old, quote-unquote unused content. There are points where people get bored and they just go back and solo that stuff for vanity stuff that they could get. It's actually a very, very powerful tool for keeping people playing your game. So as much as I'm a fan of the idea for keeping dungeons relative so that new players can experience the dungeon the way it's meant to be experienced, not a new player gets in with 3 experienced players and they just blast through it and he thinks it's the easiest thing he's ever done because he didn't get to experience it when it was brand new to us. He's looking at this old dungeon, he's got to go through it to get some gear and things like that. So I'm curious too if they will implement. They've said doing things like item level syncs for time trials, which I think is okay. And they've also recently spoken about letting people go into old dungeons solo. Those are things that they have planned. So I'm actually interested in that question. I want to see if they address item level sync just in general. So hoping to see some information on that. Let's move into the general questions because I actually didn't have a lot of general questions. I mean, it's not that I didn't have a lot, but I just saw all the ones I wanted to ask. And everyone's taking the general opportunity to ask about the expansion. What's the name? How's the item level system going to work going forward into the expansion? What are the new jobs? How are they different from the current jobs? Those are all questions that are already present on the general forum. So you know what I did? I went and I upvoted them because that's the most important thing, that they get seen. And there's tons of questions there. I'm hoping the 2.4 section is actually very short, and with the topics that are at hand, I have a feeling it will be. I have a feeling this general section is really where the meat of this live letter is going to come. I just hit my TV screen with my finger a little bit. So I asked 2 questions. I know it's not a lot. It's less than I usually do. But the first one, and I'm sorry, I have to apologize to you guys for having to ask this question as well. I literally typed it out exactly like this on the general forum. So I hate to have to ask again, but ETA for add-ons? I mean, this is a question that just kind of got answered, I guess, 2 or 3 live letters ago, where they said they were sort of they're at a specific phase where they were determining how to roll out the add-ons. I just want to know when they're coming, man. And I kind of just want the UI ones. At this point, I would just settle for just UI add-ons, just so I can make a few changes to clean some things up and clean up my menus and whatnot. So that's question number 1. And question number 2 is actually about something I addressed at the beginning of this video, and how the topics on this live letter are quite predictable. They're not things that I feel I need to ask a lot of questions about, because they're things that in the past have been predictable. How many turns we get, how many bosses we get relative to the turns, how much the item level increases, how the tomestone gear works. It's not things that are too difficult to look at and predict. So I actually asked if that's going to remain that way. Will the current development cycle continue after the expansion? Meaning, will we have the formula of, 3 new dungeons, 1 raid, alternating between 8 and 24 man, 1 new lone boss encounter, which in our case is the primals for this patch, but you never know. They may not be primals in the future. They could just be a lone boss fight that is just their, sort of equivalent to primals. New currency every other patch, just all those things. Will that development cycle be continuing? And it's just a curiosity of mine. I actually like that every time I know a patch is coming, I at least know the bare minimum of what I'm going to get. I'm gonna get the 3 dungeons, and I'm gonna get some awesome music with them, which is one of my favorite things about when they add new dungeons. No, I'm gonna get a new raid, whether it be, you know, the 24-man that's meant for everybody, or the 8-man that's meant for those static groups. The new primal, I always love taking on those encounters. Knowing the new currency, I like knowing that there's at least a baseline of things I'm going to receive. It's reassuring. I'm just curious if that is still the plan moving forward. So, if you guys have any questions, be sure to go to the forum and ask them. If you see a question that you like, upvote it. You know, you could ask it again, but upvoting it also helps increase its visibility to the developers as a question that, you know, it's easier for them. They see the question, they see it has a lot of likes. They don't have to read through and see if other people are asking the question. It's a lot easier, and I'm sure they do it. I'm sure they do check all the questions, but I don't know. Just go to the forums, voice your opinions, ask your questions, and let me know what you guys think about the questions that I asked. If there's anything that you might want to add, if you have an opinion about any of these questions, what you think might happen, leave it all in the comments below. Just speak your mind. So anyway, guys, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn videos, guides. You guys know the drill by this point. It's been over a year now of these videos, and I'm sure you guys know how the outro goes by now. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.